There we go. Now it says we're live, but it also says live streaming isn't available right now. So if you guys are watching us live, we're unavailable right now.
Right?
Yeah. I'm hoping you're having a good time watching us be unavailable according to YouTube. So we're just going to assume that the live button is working and you all can hear us. So, hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Crypto Campfire podcast. This is the professor.
And Mitch.
And today we've got Ben Ward with O1 Labs. But before we start talking to Ben, let's grab that crypto news from Paul, the crypto curator, and a little bit of Mitch action.
Oh my God. On the spot again. Paul hasn't posted
You didn't.
lately.
Mitch,
okay, so wait, I don't even need
this.
that. I don't even need that. So, news of the day, Elon Musk totally trashed Bitcoin today, caused a major market pullback by stating that Tesla would no longer be taking Bitcoin for payment due to the carbon footprint created by mining of Bitcoin. And the amount of stir that this caused today has been pretty remarkable. And there's been a lot of tweets flying around about that. So if you had weak hands and you decided to sell during this plummet, I apologize. I'm sure you will be kicking yourself as Bitcoin tends to rise back up as it always does. And until that time, buy the dip.
That was kind of funny. I feel like we should have seen that coming. Like I feel like I saw it coming. I mean, he's got to take the opportunity to sell his energy efficient products and his solar roofs. So, Ben, what do you think about the drama in Bitcoin today?
Well, I mean, it's a bit of a fast turnaround from Elon, wasn't it? Wasn't it only like 3 or 4 weeks ago that they said
I don't think it was a whole month even.
So, no, so look, a little bit of inconsistency there, I guess. I mean, I'd hate to be working at Tesla. I can't imagine what it's like. I've heard it's not fun.
All right, so here's
and
my
I guess
question.
It kind of makes sense, a change of direction every few weeks.
The guy's obviously brilliant. He's probably borderline genius, and he's been very successful, right? How is it that you would, number one, start taking Bitcoin from as Tesla without doing the research and knowing that the carbon footprint already existed, right? And then all of a sudden it becomes an issue 2, 3, whatever it is, time frame after you start that doesn't make any sense to me.
It wasn't an accident. This was strategic.
Absolutely, it was strategic. So, it does make sense to me, but a lot of people don't see it, right? It's kind of like on Saturday when he said, Dogecoin was a joke and all of that, and it just caused the price to plummet. It's, I'm sorry, but all this is perfect market manipulation in its finest.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, what a crazy world we live in. And I mean, this isn't just for crypto. This goes for traditional markets as well, where, people tweeting are having like very, very, very material impacts on price. It's really quite incredible, this age that we live in.
It is no question about that. So, Ben, please share a little bit about yourself and how you got into cryptocurrency or into the space, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, I'm afraid to say I probably don't have the most interesting story, in the sense that my background is quite traditional. I was sort of working in consulting and traditional finance, and what that meant was, I guess what that job is sort of going into these, big companies, big banks, big financial institutions, looking around and trying to, help them do business better, basically, find efficiencies, increase their profit, all this sort of stuff. And, there was sort of a couple of things that I discovered through that job. The first was that I didn't want to ever work for one of these big organizations. So that, cut out a huge swath of I guess, the employment market. And the second thing was like getting to look inside of these companies and have a bit of a poke around. You realize, how inefficient a lot of these businesses are. And I guess you sort of feel that as a customer as well. You can tell from my accent that I'm not American. At some point I moved to America, and, even coming from an English speaking country and moving here, it was a hell of a lot of friction and a hell of a lot of pain, just, trying to move my finances over. I don't have a credit score. US institutions don't recognize anything for me back home. I remember desperately, and I should qualify as well, but fortunate to have a pretty good paying job at this time, but I'd walk into a bank branch and they'd say, "I'm sorry, like, you're a high risk customer. We're going to give you a $200, provisional credit limit on your credit card, and you need to put $200 down as a down payment to secure that. And, if you pay it off on time every 3 months, we'll increase it $100 a month, blah, blah, blah." So anyway, this is a long-winded way of saying that, sort of being exposed to as a customer and working inside of the financial sector, I kind of came at crypto from that, and I guess realized, a lot of these pain points could be solved through, financial technology more broadly, I would say, but, and I came at crypto and blockchain as a subset and a specific use case of that. And then the more I sort of got stuck into it and the more I learned about it, the more excited I got about blockchain and crypto specifically. So yeah, that's kind of the genesis story, I guess.
Nice. I like it. That's, all the stories tend to differ a little bit, but the end result is the people find that cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology are so incredibly the way of the future that once you're in, you're stuck. There's no way back. There's definitely no way back.
It's deep. Yeah. It's deep. And there's so many forks and splits, and it's not.
Yeah.
There's no.
And I hate to say it as well. I guess the part of that story that I should add is, I guess I started, becoming more actively involved in the space and started making my first investments towards the start of 2017. So, relatively, I'm definitely not a crypto OG, that's for sure. And I guess that timing, just preceded the start of the previous bull cycle, which, I guess peaked at the end of 2017. But I remember I was at work at my old job in consulting, and I had a more technically minded friend of mine, and in like December 2016, he started telling me about this thing called Ethereum, and I'm like, I just don't really get this. And he's trying to explain smart contracts to me. And again, I should qualify, I'm not technical at all. I've got a finance and kind of humanities background. And I remember him saying it. He's like, oh, there's this new thing called Ethereum. He's like, oh, it's $5. You should buy something. You come in the next day. Oh, it's gone up to $6 today. And the next day he'd come in, oh, it's at $7. And every day he'd come in and say it's gone up. I'm like, every part of my like traditional financial education tells me like, this is a ridiculous bubble. Like it's going up like 20% a day. Mm-hmm. I'd be the biggest idiot to buy it right now. And that process went on for a couple of months. And so I'm like, okay, you sort of got my attention now. And so, I hate to admit that, price and, financial speculation was probably the first thing that got me paying attention to the sector. And, I do think that's a little bit of a distraction on the most part, but, it's a way to get people in the industry. And that certainly was my first taste, I guess.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think a lot of us can all say the same thing. Like, if you say that the money was at least not somewhat intriguing to you to get you pulled in, you'd be, full of shit. Like, in the place that I was in when I discovered crypto, it was exciting. Like the idea of being able to find, another way to make money and kind of control it like that and on your own and not have to deal with the bank fees and all this other bullshit. Like, there was excitement there, but also being a developer. I like that new word, developer, man. Also being a developer, just the tech is super exciting. So like learning about it and then learning about how it works and everything just kind of all fell hand in hand. So I can say I'm here for the tech. I did come in for the money initially, but it's, you fall into that rabbit hole and all of a sudden you see all the parts of it that you love because it spans so many different industries. All the elements of it are there. Everything is included. It's just another architecture on which we can build anything we want. So, if you can't find something that you love in crypto, you're not looking hard enough.
Yeah. And I think that's what sort of got me really excited about it. I mean, so when I was in undergrad in college, I sort of studied finance and business, but also, history and politics and humanities. And it was really kind of fascinating. Like even, for Bitcoin, it's kind of like the confluence of all of those things. It's, there's monetary policy, there's crypto economics, there's, consensus, and then you start getting to newer chains and on-chain governance. And, obviously there's finance in it as well. So, and tech, obviously. So yeah, there's kind of all these things that it just rolled into like, the protocol layer itself. And that's, really quite cool.
So speaking of protocol layer, why don't you tell us a little bit about Mina Protocol and what that's all about, and of course a little bit about O1 Labs.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I'm employed by O1 Labs. O1 Labs was the team that built and incubated the Mina Protocol originally, and I guess the Mina Protocol, the sort of headline thing that perhaps some folks who've heard about us have probably heard about is that the entire chain is 22 kilobytes, and Mina achieves that by using recursive zero knowledge proofs. So, there's a whole sort of technical rabbit hole that we can get down there to sort of explore that further. I'm not technical, so I can only go so far down that rabbit hole, unfortunately. So that's kind of one unique aspect of Mina. And the other is because these zero knowledge proofs are built into the protocol itself, by using ZK snarks, the protocol Mina can interact with any website on the internet that's signed by a HTTPS signature, which is, most websites these days. And by sort of reading those signatures, the protocol itself can verify that information on that website was on that website at a certain point in time, and create a proof that signs that. And what that allows you to do is, and actually I should say, all of that is trustless. All of that can occur without an API or a custom integration with that website. And what that allows you to do is to bring data on chain in a completely trustless way with any website, and that doesn't need an Oracle to do that. So yeah, there's kind of like two pretty unique use cases that come out from the use of zero knowledge proofs. Yeah, I'll pause there and let you ask some questions, because I don't want to just sort of ramble about Mina for too long.
That's a good thing though. We had Evan on the show, Evan Shapiro, the CEO of O1 Labs, for those who don't know who that is. Back in, and I think June of 2020, in fact, is around when we released that something. So, but it's nice to kind of hear, a little bit the different take on sort of how it works. There's always a different explanation of things and the way they operate. So it's always helpful to kind of get that little bit of rambling. It's like, it's super interesting, especially for the people listening. We pick up new people all the time that, they didn't hear the Evan episode. So it's nice to get all that. What have you guys done since, obviously it's been a year since we've last talked to you guys. What's been the next evolution of O1 since then?
Yeah. So a couple of things. I guess probably the main thing is that we've launched the Mainnet, which is super exciting. So that happened in March. And we did that with close to 1,000 community block producers on the network. So, we're really proud of that. And, there's a huge number of participants in our test nets as well. So, what we like to say is that certainly our test nets had, I think, the most number of participants of any chain outside of ETH 2.0. So yeah, one of the things I guess that the 22 kilobyte size enables us to do is like greatly expand access to the chain and allows anyone to connect trustlessly. So, one thing that we've really been aiming to do is, onboard as many block producers as we can, onboard as many community members as we can to really increase that participation and increase that level of decentralization, which, if you work in the blockchain sector, ultimately, that's what you should care about, I would argue. So that was the main thing, launching the network. And then the second thing would be conducting the community sale via CoinList, which happened last month. That was, super cool to see, like record-breaking, numbers of subscribers and participants. Notwithstanding some sort of well-publicized issues with the CoinList platform itself, we're pretty happy with how that sale went and managed to distribute those tokens like super widely to over almost 42,000 people. So they're probably the two major milestones. But really what we want to focus on now is building that community and encouraging and supporting developers to come and build on the protocol as well. So that's kind of the next big challenge.
Awesome. So let me ask you a question, Ben. And being from Australia, you're probably pretty familiar with desert environments, right?
Sure.
All right. So if you were stranded on a desert and you could turn any body part into a survival mode tool, be it a vehicle, whatever it is, what body part would you choose, and what would you use, or what would you change that body part to help you survive this journey across the desert?
Okay, interesting. Well, that's a curveball question that's come out of nowhere. What would I do? I don't know. I remember I did this reminds me, like I did like a little sort of, it was like a brain teaser thing, or it was like a Navy SEAL desert survival thing. And it was like, you were given like a list of like 42 things.
Nice.
And it's like, which of these things would you pick to survive in the desert? It was almost this thing, and almost this precise question that you've asked. And I remember it was kind of a trick. The reason why I call it was like sort of brain twister was that kind of all the intuitive things that you would think you needed were actually the last things that you needed.
Right.
And it was just like really simple things were actually the ones that were going to like help you survive. So I forget exactly what the answer to the to that sort of brain teaser was, but I'm thinking it was just something simple like water. You need water, and you need like some sort of flare gun or like a giant mirror or something to attract the attention of aerial rescuers. So I guess I'm kind of cheating, but I would say two things. I'd turn one hand into an endless supply of water so you can survive, because you can go without food for a decent amount of time. And then I turn the other hand and just
crack your thumb and there you go.
Yeah.
Fill
just
up
drink
your
some
water.
Yeah. So
Nice.
then you've got the survival side checked off there, and then you just need to get rescued. So yeah, you need some sort of like mirror to reflect the sun. So you turn your other palm into a mirror, I guess. So,
there you go.
I kind of cheated on that, but
sometimes you got to cheat.
Yeah, I mean, my first answer would definitely be water, because without water, you're not going to make it. 2 days in the desert?
Yeah. Actually, I remember the moral to the story of that exercise. It was that you're not supposed to move. So there's all these things that you think, oh, that's going to help me like walk to safety, but you waste like an incredible amount of energy and water, like trying to exercise in that like extreme heat. So you just need to stay put, survive,
and hope like hell somebody's looking for you,
and be found found. Yeah. Okay. So public service announcement to everyone that's listening.
I think I'd turn my shoe into a two-way radio or a radio device, or my foot, and try and make contact with somebody.
So you said anything,
and a compass
right? Like,
in one hand.
any device that you want, any survival thing. Like, can you just turn your arm into like a helicopter arm and just like fly out of wherever the fuck you are?
I mean, I guess you could. Go gadget hands.
Yeah. I mean, I'm down, and I would just keep that all the time, like a drone arm that could hold my weight, just fly around.
Oh, that would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
So your fingers would be propellers.
That could get dangerous.
Yeah, right.
Oh wait, sorry. I guess there was a movie about that called Edward Scissorhands, kind of.
Right. Awesome. Well, that was my loose question of the day.
That's good. It's got to have a good loose question like that.
Yeah, you got to.
All right, so let's go back to elementary school. All right, what's the most? We don't want to do that one. That one didn't get exciting. Let's. What's the most? Fuck. What is with my brain today? I got nothing. The question that I was going to ask just totally gone.
Oh, I hate when that happens.
All gone. All right, we'll get back to the interesting ones later.
What was the elementary school one? Just ask that one.
Well, that's what I was trying to ask, but I lost it.
Well, that's all right.
Written down.
It'll come back. We'll circle back to that
eventually.
Okay.
So, all right, cryptocurrencies. Let's talk a little bit about cryptocurrencies, since most of the people that watch our show are into cryptocurrencies. What is the greatest benefit that you see from the initial till now design of cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology and the use of blockchain technology? What do you see as the most beneficial, and for what purpose do you see it beneficial for? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that does make sense. So, and actually, let me preface all of this by saying, in sort of all aspects of life, I enjoy being a bit of a contrarian. So, when I'm having discussions like this, or just even in person in general, when I'm in a room full of liberals, people look at me like I'm a raging right-wing nut job, and when I'm in a room full of conservatives, people look at me like I'm a bleeding heart liberal. So, I always kind of like taking the other side of the argument. And I guess to translate that to the blockchain space, when I'm talking to like normal real world people and talking blockchain to them, they think I'm some loopy, I guess crypto anarchist.
No, to them you're. Oh, okay, I get you.
Yeah, and when I'm talking to blockchain people, they think like, who the hell's this like finance 1.0, big tech, nonsense. So let me preface all of what I'm about to say with that I like being a little bit contrarian. So I'm going to say some things that maybe sound controversial in the blockchain space.
Perfect.
So what I would say is, I guess the like obviously the original innovation of Bitcoin was that it allowed consensus to be reached, amongst a pseudo-anonymous group of parties that don't trust each other, blah, blah, blah. And that's like a really cool innovation. And like what that obviously allows you to do is have, financial self-sovereignty and, control over your wealth from, censorship resistance, yada, yada, yada. We all know that sort of stuff. To me, like what is like the end game for crypto is, getting to the point where end users like don't need to know or care or understand like any of that sort of stuff, because, obviously, we're talking amongst ourselves and with crypto folks in the audience right now. There's a lot of crypto evangelism. There's a lot of, crypto's the panacea. It's the answer to everything. Put it on the blockchain, decentralize everything, and the world will be a better place. I don't fundamentally believe that, actually. I think crypto replicates existing power structures. It doesn't just, mindlessly solve every problem. And I guess an example of that is, you look at, people who are crypto rich, and, they're the ones that are, setting up, crypto VC funds and making, seed investments in new protocols and on the cap tables of all these protocols. So, it's like people that are already rich are the ones that are getting rich off crypto. The ones that are like technically savvy are the ones that are playing with DeFi protocols and getting, richer that way as well. Like we're not yet like reaching the mainstream audience, like outside of anything except like speculation and let's get rich quick and let's buy this coin and look at all these people that are millionaires off Doge, blah, blah, blah. Like that's the only way that, I guess mainstream real world people are aware of crypto, and if they're interacting with it, that's the way they're interacting with it. So the end game we need to get to is, and I'm saying this as a non-technical person, is, we need to have users who are using blockchain in a way that they don't care about blockchain. They don't need to understand it. They don't want to understand it. They're not crypto anarchists. They're not evangelists. There's just some cool, novel use cases that lets you do things that you can't do elsewhere. And that's why they don't even know they're using crypto or blockchain, and that's why they're using it. In the same way that I won't pretend to understand HTTPS or TCP, internet protocols, but I use the internet and it's pretty cool. And also I don't really need to know how any of that stuff works. So, the end game, I guess I haven't really answered your question, but the end game is, we need to get to that vision. And that's what I think, we'll see crypto go to the next level. And the way we need to get there is through usability and scalability, obviously. So, sorry, I've just rambled. I'm taking this campfire thing a little bit too seriously.
No, this is great. This is perfect.
I'm not really following a coherent line of argument. I'm sorry.
That's all right. No, this is just guys sitting around a fire having a conversation, right? And so it becomes challenging for those that are totally structured, and not so challenging for those that just like to sit around and shoot the shit. The reason we created the podcast was to be able to talk to people, like-minded people, about what we're passionate about, right? And that's it. And so, there's a fun, light side to this podcast, and then there's the information and the learning side to the podcast, and then there's the getting to know the person on the other side of the screen side of the podcast. So don't apologize for rambling. Sometimes that's what it's all about, and we all can kind of grasp and understand exactly where you're coming from, because a lot of us that have been in it for as long, we understand where you're coming from, and we understand that these things need to be easier for people. It needs to be no brainer. We don't like it. Most people don't know about ACH and how ACH works when you're processing a Visa payment or when you're processing a checking account payment. Nobody understands that, but nobody needs to. They just know put card in, paid for object. Okay, done. Bye. That's all they need to understand. So as this technology evolves, those things are going to become more relevant and more prevalent. However, it's our passions and it's our drive that continues to build and make this a better place and make this a better use case on multiple fronts. for people to actually be the end users of. So yeah, we're early. There's no question about that. And I think that hype is nothing but excitement, and excitement does what? It creates interest. And when you're interested in learning about something, or when you're interested in something, you tend to learn more about that something. So I think everything has a genesis, everything has a beginning, and with most people that beginning is hype or excitement. So no, you summed it up. You summed it up very well. Not a question about that. That was awesome.
All right, so I remember the elementary school question from before. So we're
I was gonna ask you a question. Actually, I want to throw one back at you. I want to throw one back at you. So I guess, given everything that I just said, and this is something that I've been wrestling with myself, actually, like, do you actually care about decentralization? And do you think that other people in the crypto space and end users maybe more broadly care about decentralization? And the reason why I asked that question, and so I'm interested to hear your guys' thoughts on this, is, if you actually look at the way that people are interacting with blockchains, the vast majority of people, they're probably using it, accessing them through centralized exchanges. Even if they're like pretty deep in it and they're developers, they're maybe building apps on Ethereum, but they're probably using Infura on the back end, which is a centralized entity as well. They're probably not self-custodying their tokens, because all that stuff is just really hard and really expensive as well. And I guess the sort of the PS that I'll put on that as well is that, again, I'm not technical. I don't really trust myself. I've lost keys. I've lost tokens. I've lost passwords. Every time I send a simple transaction, I panic for 5 minutes until I see it appear on chain. I'm really clumsy and forgetful. And, I think centralized entities have a role. If I send a bank payment to the wrong address, at least I know that someone can reverse it and fix it up. So yeah, I guess the reason why I asked the question is, we're all in blockchain because ostensibly we should care about these things. And if you don't care about decentralization, why are we using these big, clunky, expensive blockchains? You might as well just use a regular database. But, even when you're looking at crypto native people, if you look at the way that people are interacting with the ecosystem, very few people are actually practicing what they preach. And so it leads me to wonder, do people actually care about decentralization? So I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, that's a good question. And honestly, I do care about decentralization. I'm not one of the people that only exclusively uses decentralized anything. I mean, obviously, everywhere you look in crypto, you're still using centralized pieces and parts, no matter how decentralized you think you really are, but I think ultimately a lot of people say they care about decentralization more than they actually care about decentralization. And I think a lot of that really stems from a lack of understanding of what decentralization actually means. For me, it's exciting because one of the biggest gaps we have between technology as it is now and where it's going is trying to find automated ways of things working without people being involved. And decentralization is a big part of that. It's not all of that. AI is obviously really what's going to have to drive all that. And we're so far away from true autonomous, human interaction to really let anything go and be fully decentralized on an AI standpoint. But I think it's really critical to evolution of certain pieces of tech as we move forward. Not everything needs to be decentralized. Like you said, there's some applications you should just use a freaking SQL database and call it good. But in certain cases, that's really important to have that decentralization. And I think money, as when you're looking at cryptocurrencies, is a massive reason for that. If you're looking at data verification, like NFTs, proof of ownership, that kind of thing, I think that's critical. Decentralization is critical in those aspects. Governance tokens, things like that, where you're sort of turning control of an entity or software platform or something like that over to a community, having a fully decentralized community that can maintain and develop that in an actually decentralized fashion is powerful in certain ways. It's also dangerous and risky in a lot of other ways. It's, again, one of those tailored things. Certain applications are going to need that and certain ones are not. So I think that's a lot of the failures that we're going to see from projects coming up are projects that just don't need blockchains. So it brings up a lot of interesting points that we could go down 100 different rabbit holes in. But it's definitely a good thing that we should be talking about.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And my take on it is what people understand decentralization to mean, right? A lot of people look at decentralization as non-governance, as non-controlled, as, you know, something that is just like a wildfire going and just happening, right? A lot of people look at decentralization as that. I look at decentralization as a means to an end. It gives us opportunities in the sense that there's not one entity controlling the actions or the outcome of a specific project or a specific action. There's multiples. And the fact that there are multiples makes it like you said earlier, when you're talking about blockchain, you're talking about trustless. You're using computer nodes around the world that don't have to trust each other. They just have to come to consensus. And so that being said, I think that there is an importance to decentralization when it comes to security of things, because you don't have one entity controlling that information. Outside of that, I think centralization or structure is needed, whether or not it's a decentralized or centralized aspect. I think both of those need structure and need protocols. Now, the fact that what makes something decentralized and still be able to function with decentralization in mind is the fact that there's protocols, there's things that are written, there's smart contracts, there's all these things that are involved in that decentralized entity that make it function without having to have control of a singular entity. So hopefully that makes sense. That's kind of my take on decentralization versus centralization.
Yeah, well, let me pose a follow-up question, because I agree with everything that both of you just said, and I think all of that theoretically makes sense. But like, do people actually care about it? Like, are they voting with their feet? And I don't know. I'm just not sure that I'm seeing that. Like, it's easy for us to all say everything that you just said.
By people, are you meaning, you know, the majority of people or everybody? I mean, obviously not everybody is, and I would say probably there's more of a majority that don't care. You know, most people want you to hold their hand and they want you to be able to reset their password for you.
Right.
You know, that's what it is. It is what it is. And that's why blockchain isn't massively popular and, like, you know, mass adopted yet, because it's, you know, it's not something that really everybody's going to care about. Let's be honest. You know, it's been out for a long time, but it has to be that underlying tech, like you mentioned earlier. So it's all about the next layers, like the third-party abstractions, to make everything look like you don't even know blockchain's there. You don't have to know. You're just gonna, like Mitch, like you said, is just swipe the card, pay for the thing, and that's it.
Right. And you know? and the reality is that most people, they don't care about the function. They just care about the result. And that's a big thing. And the other side to that is to say that inherently as human beings, we are lazy. If people have to work for something, they would just as soon go over here and take what they don't have to work for, than deal with something that they have to work for. Plain and simple. And so as things become easier to use, less work is involved in securing your keys, you know, and being your own bank. I mean, to be your own bank and control your own wealth has its responsibilities, because it's a big deal, right? So you're assuming those responsibilities as an individual that you would normally give over to your bank. But people like us that have been in this space realize the difference between that value of controlling it ourselves versus having a bank control it. So I think therein lies the difference. Some people want to have control of their future, and some people don't care. They really don't. They just know, I get up, I go to work, I pay my bills, I come home, I go to bed, I eat dinner, I go to bed, and on the weekends I have a little fun. That's it, right? The average person, that's all they know. That's all they do. That's day in and day out every day. But I think the people in this space want more than that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I guess to sort of take your argument to its kind of logical conclusion, Mitch, though, like, do you envisage a world where someone can just completely exist in the crypto ecosystem? I feel like you're always going to have to touch, you know, traditional financial institutions to sort of on and off ramp from crypto.
No, I see the future of cryptocurrency as being what it is. It's a means of exchange, a means of peer-to-peer transactions, and something that's going to maintain its value that we put into it, whether it's pegged to the dollar or not. A Satoshi is still a Satoshi. And the same with other coins, right? Their cryptos are still of value. So it still gives you something to exchange from one person to another. It just depends on what the value is put into it, right? And as soon as we stop pegging it to the dollar, then it will become its own value, right? It's kind of like gold. Gold is still pegged to the dollar. But if the dollar fell to nothing and you still had a piece of gold, that gold is going to be valuable to someone in the means of trade. Just inherently, because it has been for so many years. Precious metals. Oh, I'll take that. I mean, at the end of the day, really, what is value and what is trade? Trade is nothing but energy from one person to another. How did that energy get attained? That energy is either attained by working for it, coming up with a token that represents that energy and work that you put in, and giving that token of energy to somebody else to utilize basically by your labor, right? So trade is nothing more than trading energy. It just depends on what energy you wish to trade. I don't know. I hope that makes sense, because it did to me.
And ultimately, I think we'll get close. Like, as long as cryptocurrencies, quote unquote, stay a viable method and we continue using them and they continue to grow as a thing, I think it's totally possible to get at least most of the way there. You're not ever going to really get all the way there, because at some point you're going to find a situation where you need to come into some sort of legal tender for whatever country you might be in. Maybe it's not that widespread, and maybe it is, but ultimately you're going to get to the point where not a lot of small stores or even a lot of big stores are going to say, yes, I want to take Bitcoin, but you're going to have the payment processing companies that will, because as soon as they can easily and reliably, it's going to require stable markets, and whether it's stable coins or Bitcoin or whatever, if they're going to start accepting crypto, it's going to start with payment processors. And as soon as the major payment processors start doing that, then obviously that provides the easiest on-ramp for other companies to just click the button that says, okay, yeah, we'd like to enable cryptocurrencies. And I know it's not quite that simple, but it makes that's the next step towards getting that the ability to sort of live on crypto only, to be able to pay in crypto. You don't have to necessarily have every shop want to take Bitcoin, but it just kind of happens automatically at a certain point.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And sorry to take us down this rabbit hole. The reason why I did, and the reason why I've been sort of wrestling with this question, is to sort of have a brief connection back to the Mina Protocol. Is, one of the things that we're trying to achieve with that 22 kilobyte nature is just making it accessible to everyone. So it actually, blockchains can be used trustlessly in a decentralized way, which, again, as I said, the vast majority of folks aren't doing for, Bitcoin or Ethereum or anything else. And yeah, it just makes me wonder, like, what is the end like vision of that world? And like, do people actually even care about that or want that? So yeah, I think it's been like definitely a unique feature of our protocol, but yeah, like more of a philosophical question I've been wrestling with for a while. I find it quite fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. And you talk about the size, it's one of the biggest issues right now with keeping all of the blockchain history on your device is obviously file storage and ability to transmit it quickly, especially in places where you don't, you want this to be functional in even the most remote places of the world where internet is terrible. You can't be expected to download 6, 7, 50, depending on some chains, gigabytes of data to sync to the newest block. So when you have that ability to do it in the way you guys are, where it's super quick, super easy to actually be running your own node without having to sync so much data, it really expands the availability to that. It always makes me wonder, like, what are the security risks to that? Because there's always, there's always trade-offs. You can't make everything perfect in all aspects, and so obviously there's things that you guys, I'm sure, have identified as of issues that you want to try to find solutions for. What sort of things have you run into looking at that side of it? Yeah,
and again, I should qualify that I'm not technical, so I won't pretend to be able to, speak to the details. But, what I've been told is that the cryptography in zero knowledge proofs is solid, and that, basically you can trust them, for want of a better word. The way that Mina compresses the blockchain to that size is by generating this recursive zero knowledge proof. And as I said, I won't pretend to understand how the cryptography works, but I've been told that it's solid. So apparently there aren't any security issues.
I'm remembering now, I think we got kind of into that with Evan too. So if anybody's listening and wants to hear more of the technical side, Evan got pretty deep in that too. And that's probably a question we should have him back on at some point and get into it a little bit deeper now that you guys have evolved, because it's kind of fascinating, honestly.
Yeah.
Where do you see you guys yourselves in about, say, 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And I think that question is inextricably linked to where do I see the ecosystem in 3 to 5 years? Which I think is sort of like an existential philosophical question that a lot of chains are probably asking themselves. So yeah, I won't pretend to know, but I guess I've got kind of 2 hypotheses on how the ecosystem is going to develop. The one kind of vision of the world is this kind of like winner takes all. And, I guess, people have been talking about that since, 2016, 2017, like blah, blah, new chain, blah, blah, ICO is going to be the ETH killer. Obviously that hasn't happened. It may happen. So, there's one vision of the world where a chain, which may be Mina in the longer term, becomes the dominant, smart contract platform. And if that's the case, something like Mina, via its, lightweight accessible chain and that decentralization and the scalability that inherently comes with that, like could play the role of, a smart contract platform like Ethereum. You could argue, potentially that, there's lots of other great projects out there as well. So one of those might be the case. So yeah, one vision of the world is Mina kills everything, for want of a better word. Or another vision of the world, which again, I think is more a question of the ecosystem itself, is, do we evolve into this sort of, I guess what I would call a hub and spoke system where, you have sort of, obviously Bitcoin is that use case of, digital gold store of value, which I personally think is here to stay. And then, the other use case of smart contract platforms where you might see Ethereum as kind of the hub, where, let's see how ETH 2.0 goes. Let's see how long it takes. But, in sort of the absence of ETH 2.0, we might be stuck with the current network that is, slow, expensive, blah, 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 but is used for like high value transactions and where decentralization is really valued and required. And then you've got these other layer 1s or even scalability layer 2s. And I guess as a brief tangent, the distinction between layer 1s and layer 2s when, layer 2s have their own tokens and, their own block producers and node operators, arguably it's an arbitrary distinction between layer 1s and layer 2s built on Ethereum. But putting that aside, you might have this world where Ethereum's at the center and, there's all these spokes off of Ethereum that are serving, certain functions, and maybe, a certain blockchain is the DeFi chain. A certain chain is the, identity chain. Something like Mina with its capabilities and its unique features could end up being, one vision that we have is that Mina is kind of the bridge to the real world, a trustless bridge to the real world in a way that, current Oracle chains arguably aren't, because of, trusted kind of, I guess, setups that are built into their protocol where Mina can, as I said, sort of talk to any website in the real world completely trustlessly. So yeah, one vision 3 to 5 years from now is that Mina is kind of serving that purpose of, providing trustless access for people who want to run their own nodes and for developers that want to onboard real world data into the Ethereum ecosystem. You can do it incredibly efficiently and 100% trustlessly using Mina. So yeah, I guess that's two competing visions to answer your question.
So if you could think back in time, what was the most exciting new technology at the time and it's nostalgic to you now?
That's really interesting. Well, it's funny, actually, before we started recording, I was commenting on the professor's PlayStation hat. I used to have a PS1 and I loved that. So I was and maybe I could say still am, was a gamer growing up. I've found that I've run out of discretionary time now and spend my whole day working in front of a computer screen. The attraction of sitting in front of a computer screen longer has diminished. but I still, every time I get stuck back into computer games, I'm always surprised at how much I enjoy them. But
so would you say the answer would be video graphics then, based on video games?
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's the fundamental technology. The actual precise answer that I was going to say, and the thing that brings up a nostalgia to me was I was thinking about the first way that I sort of got deep, I guess, into like internet technology and like, for want of a better word, like peer-to-peer and, you know, social networks and all that sort of stuff was as a kid. And I don't know if you guys would remember this or even came across it, but there was this website called Neopets. Did either of you ever play that? I mean, it was like a game. Yeah, it was like a game for children. I would have been like 10 years old playing it. It was like this thing where it was, yeah, I guess it's kind of like a Pokemon or kind of like a Digimon or something, where you had these like digital pets online and you would like raise them and train them. And
my daughter had that, and so did my son.
Yeah, they'd like go up in levels and get new abilities, and you'd buy all these, you know, weapons and stuff for them. I mean, very, very basic. It was all HTML based, no animation. But it was, you know, massively multiplayer. And it had this like economy, and there was like currency and all this sort of stuff. So you can see the sort of crypto themes coming through this. But what I sort of really enjoyed about that, and again, I was a kid, I would have been like 10 years old, but it was like, yeah, you could train your pet, battle with people, but then you also could like, you know, set up like a store, and like, there was like an in-game economy where you could buy and sell weapons, and you could like set the price, and then you could like code the sort of front end of your store in HTML. And so I learned like very basic HTML that way, which is about as far as into my coding journey that I went. But it was funny. I used to play that with my little brother, and he had an account as well, and he loved HTML, and he would have been like 8 years old. And then he ended up going on to be a software developer, which I attribute to the HTML. And he was like being paid. He was like being paid by people to build websites when he was like 9 and 10. And then I sort of took. He was like writing the HTML for our store to like make it look like sexy and fancy, and I was the one kind of running the business, like, oh, what weapons and what armor are like trending right now, and identifying market niches and figuring out the pricing, again as a 10-year-old. So he kind of took the coding route, and then I took the kind of like business financial route off the back of that. So
cool.
Yeah, it makes me nostalgic, like thinking about that. And again, there's kind of like, you can sort of see sort of like the origins of like, I guess like social networks and, you know, internet payments and stuff like that. So there's, yeah, maybe I could attribute some of my crypto interest back to those days.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Absolutely.
Love that. All right. Last question of the night. If you could change the color of all the water in the world for 7 days, what color would it be and why?
That's interesting. Well, it's funny because my favorite color is blue. And so the ocean is already blue. So I need to think of a more coherent answer. You know what? Maybe I'd say red. And I guess the reason why I'd say that is it's a stark contrast. It's a little bit dramatic, a little bit scary. And I have seen it occasionally, and it looks kind of cool. I grew up by the sea in Australia, and I'm living by the sea in the Bay Area right now. And very occasionally there's this phenomena which you may have heard of, or some of the audience may have heard of, called a red tide. Mm-hmm. Where basically it's like the phytoplankton get out of control and start replicating uncontrollably, and it like literally turns the water blood red. And it's pretty cool and pretty scary. So it does happen. That happened in Sydney somewhat recently, maybe a year or two ago. And I think it happened here in the Bay Area last year as well. So
well, that's cool that you picked a primary color. I was thinking periwinkle, but
oh, there you go.
Well, considering you said red, let's put a second part on that question. If you were able to give everybody a notification that it would be turning red, would you do that, or would you just let it be a shock and surprise everybody?
I think you got to let it be a shock, right? You want to see the news headlines and
reactions.
Faces. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. It's much more fun that way.
Benza says jade. J-Max says blue. Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Hey, Ben, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We hope you had a good time. We did. It was a lot of fun, and hopefully the audience enjoyed it, and you guys got something out of this as well as we did. It's always a pleasure to have people on the show and bring them to you guys, get you guys to learn a little bit more about what projects they represent, but more so about the people behind it. So until next time, guys, thank you for your support. Don't forget to hit that like and smash button and subscribe to the Crypto Campfire and put the word out to your friends.